Okay, so John chapter 1 and 2. To be honest, as I'm reading your comments, I'm starting to regret that I chose this particular gospel because I'll explain right away. There's a lot of sifting we have to do in this gospel. There's a lot of peeling, right? It's not as had I chosen, for example, the Gospel of Mark, it's much more the authentic Jesus in the day to day life, the simple teachings, right? Here we are in this kind of, I don't know how to put it. It's already so layered, right? And it's so hard. I agree with some of you to really get to what Jesus actually is teaching, right? And some of you are turned off by the tone, right? Ahmad was one of them, right? Saying, yeah, if he's trying to gain them, the tone of his voice is not helping, right? It's super aggressive, super insulting at times, right? Overconfident, right? So yeah. So again, right? I invite you for this gospel, right? Um, Ahmad, it was a kind of a strange translation. But no, I think you're right. The tone is aggressive, right? That I mentioned, and I mentioned this in introduction. So the invitation, right, for all of us, I have the same problems as you do, right, when I'm reading this text, is to try to sift, right? This is one of the main things we'll be doing in the class is sifting what are the relevant teachings and leaving the polemics aside, right? And the theology aside. I find it more useful um, to connect to the teachings than to do theology, right? Who is Jesus? Is he God? Or the plan of salvation? Why did he die? All of this I'm leaving aside for our class, right? So I'm just focusing on the teachings and on what we can learn, right, as human beings from this amazing life, right? This is indeed an amazing life that Jesus led, and that's all I'm really interested in personally, right? So, okay, so let's get into some of your questions, and then we'll get into the text. There's 2 chapters we want to do today, so a lot to cover and little time. Okay, bunch of you were struggling with a seeming contradiction. This is in the poem in the beginning, and let's remember that it's poetry, right? This is not Jesus, by the way. This whole poem about the Word and the Word was with God and the Word was God. This is not Jesus speaking. He doesn't talk like that, right? Jesus is very simple. Remember, he's a hillbilly. He's not going to start, pontificating about the Word in Greek, the Logos. So this is a very ancient poem which it is believed that John included. He didn't write this. He included this poem in his text and then went on to tell the story. But so it's already very poetic, metaphorical, and we'll study this. And so contradictions are normal in poetry, and we'll try to figure out what those contradictions are, right? So, Granik, most of your questions I will answer as we go along in the chapter 1. So I'm going to leave you. He asked basically the contradiction with God or was God, which is it? Right? Can't be both, can't be in 2 places at once. It's against the laws of physics, right? The expression law versus grace and truth, right? What's going on? Is Jesus trying to, be better than Moses? How dare he? Who does he think he is? Right? So yes, that's a legitimate question, absolutely. And then why does he chase everybody out of the temple, right? Still Granik. This I can answer briefly, right? Because I won't be talking about it at all. This is, I mean, if you're familiar with the context, if you recall at the time, the festivals, they were centered in Jerusalem, but the Jews from all over the world would come, right? And they couldn't drag their cattle with them to sacrifice. So they would actually sell the cattle for the sacrifices in the precincts of the temple. And so you just have to imagine the scene, right? Here's a temple, right? Great, magnificent structure. And inside it has become a kind of, backyard with, chicken, lambs, goats. And it was a huge mess, right? And they were selling, by the way, for profit, right? There's some historical evidence that they would take advantage of the situation because these Jews would come from all over the world and they had to bring the sacrifice. And so they would, bring up the prices a little bit and so forth. So there was a lot going on in that marketplace that was, problematic. And I think Jesus just had a breakdown, right? A mental breakdown at that moment, which again emphasizes, right, the humanity, right, the passion. We tend to depict Jesus in the movies and in, the iconography as very calm and and very stable, kind of like Buddha, right? Actually, Jesus, remember, he's from the Middle East. There's no calm. It's all very ready to boil over, right? So he's really a man of his generation, of his time, right? He's easily triggered throughout the text. Okay, and then finally the element, the mention of Passover in general in this book, the John mentions the Jewish festivals. There is a reason. He is throughout the book, if you study it a little bit, Granick, you will see that he is trying to um, transform the meaning of each holiday, right? So that's why he mentions the holiday, and then there's always a teaching which is supposed to expand the meaning of the holiday. So I think that's why he's doing that. So that was just briefly. Okay, Ahmad, very good. This is typical criticism of Islam, of Christianity. Very, by the way, a very serious criticism. I think it should be taken seriously, which is that, and same criticism from Judaism, by the way. And I'm trying in this class to go around this criticism. This is the criticism, make sure you write this down because this is fundamental and I'm trying really to go around that. This notion that Jesus is a kind of intermediary between us and God, and that we need Jesus in order to get to God, right? That without Jesus, we can't access. And this is taught in Christianity, right? This is a common teaching in Christianity that you need Jesus in order to access God. Without Jesus, we would have no access, right? So, and this was the criticism of Islam and of Judaism, saying how, how can you bring something between, oh yeah, I guess I'm using a big word, intermediary, in between, right? He's a kind of in-between man, bridge, right? This is a legitimate, serious criticism, I think, and I agree with it. Why should there be something or anyone having to come between us and God, right? And so my interpretation in the class, or my reading of the gospel, will be to see Jesus not as somebody who is in between, but on the contrary, somebody who is introducing us to how we can directly connect ourselves, right? So he is directly connected to God. We see that throughout the text. And remember, I'm telling you, Jesus is teaching us how to be human. So all of us in a way can become like him, right? As powerful and as wise and as loving as he, right? So in a way, he's showing us the path, right? But he's not in between. He's showing us the path to a direct connection. Are you following me on this? Put your hand in the screen if you're with me, right? So remember, the whole theme of John is the sacred marriage, right? Between the human and the divine. Jesus is simply showing how the two connect so that we can create the same connection, right? So I personally don't see, at least in the way I'll teach it, you can see it so many ways, right? But in this particular class, I'm not going to read Jesus as the in-between, that you have to go to him and then you can, right? I'm seeing him as a kind of a model of how we can connect, to the degree to which we can connect, the degree of intimacy we can experience with God, right? In the same way that he had it. Okay. Does that answer a little bit your question, Ahmad? Yeah? Okay. Kestenbaum, same criticism, right? I think you had the same objection as Ahmad. He's asking, okay, so is Jesus the Son of God? Why do we need a Son of God if we are sons of God, right? Kestenbaum, very good, absolutely, right? And again, I would say the same thing I told Ahmad, right? Jesus is the Son of God, showing us how we can be sons and daughters of God, right? He's showing us what it looks like to be a divine offspring, right? He's showing us the degree of intimacy that is possible that his contemporaries did not know at the time. Now we know better, perhaps because of this event, right? But he's showing us how we also can be sons and daughters of God. Are you following me, Kestenbaum? Okay. So it's going to be in this class. I will try to be undoing some of the teachings of Christianity, just so you can have access to the teachings of Jesus, because there's a lot of undoing has to happen before we can really access. Okay, I'll come back to Aline. That was interesting what you said. I'll come back to that in a second. Pierre-Antoine, nicely put. I loved it. She mentions how the prophet, right? That is, so John, this prophet that comes before Jesus in chapter 1, right? The John, which is, I get it, how some of you got confused. Not the same as the author. It's another guy. Yeah. So this guy, right, talks about make straight the paths, right? So he's trying to make straight the paths for Jesus. And she's, reminding us, so Pierre-Antoine observes that, well, the path of Jesus is anything but straight, very crooked, right? He's going around, you don't know where he's going, where he's going to be next. He ends up crucified. This is a very crooked path, right? So she mentions, and also the fact that he doesn't fit into the expectations of the time, right, as to who a teacher should be, what they should teach. So very crooked path, paradoxically. So nicely observed, Pierre-Antoine. And finally, yeah, Goldstein, nicely put, right? She understands rightly so that Jesus is not meant to be a replacement of God, but a manifestation. It's not replacement theology, right? This is not a new God coming. Okay, Wagner, you have a question. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, this is John the Baptist, right?
I think, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was just wondering, this is John the Baptist, right?
Yeah, John the Baptist was not the same author as as the author, right?
Oh, okay.
I know
Sorry.
it's confusing. Yes, John the Baptist. So some of you, yeah. So this John the Baptist is simply um, somebody who paved the way for Jesus, a minor prophet, not mentioned in the Hebrew Bible later, right? And then Jesus comes along and they meet and so forth, right? Okay, let's try and get into this text, see what we can do with it. All right, so let me first, I want to really paint the landscape so you can really see what is happening in this poem on chapter 1. It's a very powerful moment um, that I want you to really experience. So we have to understand the political climate of the time to really see what is happening and how powerful this revelation is, right, that we have in the book of John. So we are under Roman rule, right? Now, if you're familiar a little bit with history, you know that the Romans were some of the most cruel conquerors. They were not like the Greeks. The Greeks were bad, but the Romans, they were bestial, right? They were, I mean, in fact, in the Talmud, right, in Jewish writings, they compare Rome, rightly so, to the beast in the book of Daniel, this terrible beast, right, that had iron teeth and would eat everything on its path, right? So this apocalyptic beast that is described in the book of Daniel, which is incredibly destructive and destroys everything that it steps on, they interpret it as pointing to Rome, and rightly so, right? So we are in a time, right, where there's a lot of violence, cruelty, poverty, disease. I mean, if you read some of these texts, you have so many diseased people walking around. It's incredible. And the poverty, right, is rampant. You have crucifixions, which would line the streets, right? So many, each time there's somebody who is seen as a possible traitor, they are crucified, right? So it's not just Jesus. This was a big thing. Everybody, so many people, right? So really, we are at a time historically which feels like the end of an era. There is an element of nihilism, of decay, of deterioration in Israel at the time, right? This is not, I mean, we talked about the golden age of Israel with King Solomon. We are now in the trenches, right? This is the dredges. This is what's left, right? So we are really in a time of great darkness, right? Politically, socially, existentially, everything is dark, right? Now, with this backdrop, and you read the beginning of the book of John, I want you to see it like a movie, okay? Try to see it like a movie like me. Here we are, right? In a time of complete brutality, oppression, no end in sight, right? And then you have this text, right? This poem, and it says this in the beginning. Okay, remember this. There's several words I want you to focus on. In the beginning was the Word, right? The Word was with God. All things were made through him. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Okay, there are several words which you have heard before together in a different context. Alim got it, so I'm not going to ask her, but she got it, or maybe she gave me the idea. I don't know. The word beginning, word, light, life, made. Where did we hear this before? All this group of words. Well, this just sounds familiar. Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
It's kind of just retelling the creation story.
Yes, he's echoing Genesis 1. In the beginning, same, right? You have the same expression in the beginning, and you have the notion of creation, making, then he adds, right, the word, but there's the notion of light, right? And you can see in both texts, they are in parallel. Whoever wrote this poem is thinking. Remember, they're all Jews over here, right? Even though they sound Greek. These are all Jews. They know the Hebrew Bible very well. He is thinking as he is writing of Genesis 1 with the explosion of light that occurred in Genesis 1 through the word of God, right? God spoke. And here we have like a second creation. This is historical. This is momentous in the history of mankind. At least that's what the author is trying to tell us. We are at the eve of a second creation. Are you following? Because this is crucial. If you get this, you got the whole book. Are you seeing what I'm saying? I'll put your hand, right? So the author is doing this, right? He's trying to tell us here, right now, in this time, in the beginning of this text, I am telling you, we are at the threshold of an event as momentous and powerful as the creation of the whole world, right? We are in a moment of second creation. There is another word that has been spoken, right? Or another word is being spoken over the planet. A new beginning is given to us, right? A new light, new life, right? This is what this poem is saying, right? Now, the word logos, I'll do a little Greek, not my specialty, but I'll do a little bit of it. Logos, we know, this is the word, the Greek word for word, right? If you know philosophy, you've come across this logos over and over again, right? What is the logos in philosophy? I think Delmas, you had it down in your paper. Tell me. Delmas, tell us. What is the logos? Is Delmas here? Delmas, are you with us? Yes. Speak a word, Delmas. What is the logos?
It's a little loud, but it has to do with reasoning and everything that the world was manifested in the sense that, I guess I'll go back to Heraclitus. The way that he saw it was that the world was sort of like a machine, and what undergirded and what makes it operates was this divine logos, this divine reasoning.
Yes, right? I think some of you are writing logic, absolutely, right? This is simply the intelligence of the universe, right? In the Greek context, of course, right? In the Greek context, there was this idea, logos, simply meant the intelligence of the universe, the laws of the universe, right? Which are found in physics and mathematics. This is the logos, right? So when we're hearing logos, so now I want you to hear this as a Greek and as a Hebrew, and both, by the way, will be shocked, right? Beyond as how this story unfolds, right? But let's start as Greeks. Everybody a Greek? Put on your Greek hat now. Everybody put on the Greek hat. Everybody's dressed. Okay, thank you. Okay, as a Greek, you're reading, okay, the logos. Okay, the logos has appeared. Same idea as in the Hebrew context, right? This is something momentous, right? And then as a Hebrew now, I want you to hear it, right? Now you have this notion of the word, right, which God spoke. If you want to understand the contradiction, how can it be with God and is God, right? It's very simple. I will refer you to Proverbs 8, verse 22, I believe. I'll go there briefly. You have, this is the Hebrew rendition of what is going on here. Let me find it really quick. Where's my Proverbs? Okay, everybody turn to Proverbs 8. This is important, parallel text. Proverbs 8, verse 22. Wisdom is speaking, right? Wisdom, or the Jewish equivalent of logos, right? Wisdom. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. Ages ago I was set up at first, before the beginning of the earth, before there were no depths, and so forth, right? And so here we see that the Logos, there is also a parallel between this text and Proverbs 8:22, which mentions wisdom. So Logos is another word for wisdom in the Hebrew tradition, right? So this is, and of course you can see how the Logos, wisdom here is personified as being with God and possessed by God. Does this help a little bit, the contradiction? Granik, right? Wisdom is both wisdom, and then it is also possessed by God. So it's just, I mean, both Logos and wisdom, they're not people, right? They're an attribute, right? Okay. So anyways, here we have, I don't want to leave our cinematographic experience. We had darkness, we have explosion of the Logos, explosion of light. We are expecting something momentous to happen. And instead, you have this entire, how shall I put it? Complete, I don't have the word in English, but in French, here, let's just learn French. Coup de théâtre. Okay, look it up. This is how, when you have like a plot and all of a sudden you have a unexpected turn. What does, okay, I guess I'll put that.
Is that a plot?
Twist. Okay, plot twist.
Plot twist.
Yes, yes. Okay, French coup de théâtre. Okay, now you learned some French. Plot twist. All of a sudden, unexpected development. Watch here. We skip a little bit about John, right? Verse 14, chapter 1, verse 14. And the word, which we're still looking at in the heaven shimmering, right, with light, and the word became flesh. And now if you're a Greek and if you're a Jew, you're like, what the hell is going on? Both, right? It makes no sense to the Greek mind or to the Jewish mind, right? This is extraordinary that this powerful divine word or divine logos or divine wisdom all of a sudden, shloop, becomes flesh. And this, in my view, is the extraordinary event that this poem is trying to talk about. How does the divine enter the human? This is, again, remember the motive, sacred marriage, right? We're talking, the whole gospel is about how the divine can enter us, right? This is the, you know how you have a symphony and you have, what's the beginning of this? Before the symphony starts, you have like, I forgot, prelude type thing, right? This is like he's setting the tone. He's saying, this is what is happening. This logos, who we think is up there in the astral, right? In the heavens, become flesh, right? So this is now we are entering. It's as though, right, we are expecting some majestic thing to happen, and instead we have a logos that has chosen to appear undercover, hidden in the flesh of a man, right? This is very Jewish, right? This idea of hidden God, right? Hidden purpose, hidden light, right? This is not strange, right, to the Jewish mind, or for that matter, to the Greek mind, right? So what we're seeing when the Logos becomes flesh and dwells among us, we are seeing this kind of undercover or hiding of this glorious Logos in the humble flesh of a human being, which, by the way, remember, is not meant to be just Jesus. We are also meant to be these temples, right? Hosting the divine Logos. Are you following me so far? I feel like I'm, in this big mountain by myself. It's the feeling I'm getting right now. Are you following me? Put your hand in the screen if you're following me. Okay, I'm really trying to make this real for you, right? To make it come to life. Okay, so now we have this undercover Logos, and notice the I'll get your question in the second stage. Notice the verse 14, and dwelt among us. The word dwelt actually in the Greek is literally tabernacled. So here we have a reference, right, to the temple. So this can actually help understand kind of who Jesus was, right? This kind of enigma, whether he's God or not, or mixture, right? What does it mean? It's very simple. The verb he's using here is trying to teach us something. What he's saying is this: the very same way that a temple of stone, of wood, of gold could contain or receive or be a vessel for the divine presence, in the same way he's saying now this human being is going to contain, be a vessel, a recipient for the divine presence to the same degree as the temple. right? So this is less shocking, should be, a little less shocking than, oh yeah, Jesus is walking around saying he's God. He's not, right? He's not saying this. Simply, he is the equivalent. I think the text is making an equivalency. The same way that the temple in Jerusalem, in all of its glory, was the vessel, the only vessel, in fact, in the world for the divine presence. Now we have this shift. This human being now is going to become, and Jesus mentions later, right? My body is the temple, right? He says something like that. He now shows, right? He is now becoming before our eyes the receptacle, the vessel for the divine presence. And again, there is nothing special in this, right? We are meant to follow in his footsteps, right? We are meant also to become receptacles and vessels, right? Remember, I told you there is an urgency, especially in this text, right? Jesus, remember, is foreseeing, and by the time this text is written, the temple is destroyed, right? And Jesus foresaw this, right? And so, remember, it is a momentous event that the temple was destroyed. It is not just the building was destroyed. Basically, the vessel for the presence of God in the world was destroyed, meaning no more God. No vessel, no God, right? And so you have this shift operating throughout this gospel of internalization of the temple rituals in the human body. This is what is happening. We become the new temple. We become the new sacrifice. And we'll talk about this, right? Okay, are you following me, or am I way far away by myself in the desert? Are we good? Okay. So this is technical, right? But I want you to really, this text is in a way profoundly mysterious, right? It's interesting to see what he's trying to say, right? Okay, so good. I want to continue with the last part, and we have seen his glory, just a little expression here, still in verse 14, we have seen his glory, and then he talks about Moses. By the way, where else do you see this expression of seeing God's glory? Connected to Moses, by the way. Anybody remember that story? Seeing the glory of God and Moses. Anybody remembers? Let's see. Granik, tell us.
Is it when Moses comes down from the mountain and his face is like glowing?
Before that, he has a request to God. Anybody remember? No, not the burning bush. Moses actually made a very audacious request to God while he was up there on the mountain. What did he ask God? What was the request he made, which is unbelievable? You can't believe the audacity.
He wanted to see the face of God.
Yes, and the expression is, show me your glory, right? Same expression. The author is thinking about this, right? And so the author is constantly, in a way, reminiscing, right, from his Jewish heritage. He's making connections, and the author is saying, here again, we have a similar event. Moses asking God to reveal his glory, right? And God revealing what? What does God end up revealing on that day? Does he go around showing his face? What does he show Moses? What is revealed? How does God answer Moses on this? Granik, you want to?
Yeah, I think he reveals his attributes of mercy.
Yes, attributes, exactly. Doesn't reveal his substance, reveals his actions, right? And now you can better understand how the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth, attributes of mercy, right, are coming through Jesus. What is he saying? He's saying Jesus is the manifestation of the attributes of compassion of God. That's it. Jesus is we have Sinai, where Moses has this vision of God's compassion, and we have another similar Sinai moment now, where Jesus, in the way that he lives, is going to be same thing, a revelation of the divine glory, which is revelation of the divine love and compassion. So are you seeing the connections between the Hebrew text and this text in order to clarify to his Jewish audience, right, what is happening? Okay, so this is it. This is the only theology we'll do. I just wanted to highlight this text because it sets the tone and really mentions this kind of union, first in Jesus, but we are also to experience this, right? This is not meant to be just him and then he sacrificed and we just stay the same. No, right? We are meant to experience every single thing that Jesus experienced, and to have this type of intimacy with God that he had, right? Okay. All right, now I'm going to take a couple questions. Yeah, Stage, you've been with your hand up for a while. Go ahead, Stage.
Okay, so we've gone through a lot of times. My hand went up and down, depending on. Now, here's the final question. So who is Jesus? Is Jesus a person? Is Jesus us? Is Jesus within the temple? Is Jesus, who is Jesus?
Yes, that is a
Is
question.
Jesus himself? Because if everybody is Jesus and Jesus is God, and the Jesus dwelt, and Jesus was himself as well, so then who is he? I mean,
yeah, I love the way you write this, because you say this, because in the other gospel, Mark, which is the closest, right, the most historical gospel, that question you asked comes up over and over again. Who is this guy? Who is this guy, right? Maybe I should have done that gospel, right? But this is a question that most of us, when we're encountering this historical figure, is like, who the hell is this guy, right? So it's very complex, right? In this class, I'm going to focus, right, on him as a vessel manifestation of divine attribute of compassion, period. There's more, but I'm not going to go there. And I'm going to focus on how we, right, if we follow in his footsteps, can become ourselves vessels of the divine attributes of compassion. In this text, this is what I'm seeing, right? I am seeing this notion of Jesus as a vessel, as a vessel receiving the divine presence. He is in a constant state of sacred marriage with God, right? That's what I'm seeing Jesus to be like, in this perpetual state of communion or union with God, and in a way teaching us how we can develop this, right? Is this a clear definition for the class of what I just mentioned? Put your hand on the screen if you're seeing. No blasphemy yet, hopefully, right? I'm trying to avoid. Or I'm trying to make Jesus Muslim and Jew friendly. Trying to see how I can talk about it in a way that makes sense, right? Why? Because honestly, the way Christianity has talked about it is to a certain degree problematic, at least to me, right? And maybe I don't get it. Maybe I just don't get it, right? Maybe I need to, go deeper into the mystery that is Jesus. But for now, what I'm sure of, for sure, is that definitely we have here a prototype of the sacred marriage between God and humanity. We have a prototype of what it means to be in total and constant union with God, and a path that we can follow. That's what I'm sure of so far. The rest I still need to investigate. I came late to Christianity. It's not natural to me. Right? It's not natural to anyone, actually, I think. So I'm still in the process of discovering, right, some of these texts. But for now, this is what I'm sure of. Okay. Let's go to this beautiful text on the wedding in Cana. It's my favorite passage in this book. I love it. Let's go there right now. Yeah. Okay. So this text for me, I always read it as metaphorical, right? Of course, yeah, maybe it was a historical event, whatever, who cares, right? The way that is told, right, for me is deeply symbolic. There is a deep teaching here about God in this particular text. So I want us to delve in it together. And so I'm going to be the one asking some questions and see how you interpret this story. What beautiful lesson you can get from this particular story. So first of all, right, notice everything begins, I told you this already, with the wedding. Again, this is a recurring theme in the writings of John in general, right? Sacred marriage theme and so forth, no problem. Okay, so here's the story, I remind you, right? We're at this wedding. Again, story in my view that is actually a parable should be interpreted as having a deeper philosophical or spiritual lesson, right? I want you to read the text like this. Most of John needs to be read like this. Every story has some deeper spiritual teaching that needs to be drawn out of the text, right? Everything is like an image, a metaphor, right? He's a poet. So here's a story. I tell it to you briefly, and then you tell me what can we learn about God in this particular story, right? Okay, you have a wedding. They run out of wine, God forbid. And now notice the mother, right? She steps in, nudges Jesus to do something. And this is really the first thing he actually does. First public miracle, first public, right, show of his power, right? In a way, she has inaugurated his work. So again, the emphasis on the woman's influence, right? Remember, Jesus's teachings are mother's house teachings, right? So it's only normal that the mother is the one nudging him. She taught him, and now she's the one nudging him out. Okay, so what does it mean? So she tells the people there, do whatever he asks you, and so the only thing available are these big jars used to purify. This is water. Maybe people who are from the Jewish background, you could explain to me. Water used for purification, these huge stone jars, I'm assuming this is for a kind of bath or mikveh, ritual bath, perhaps. Anybody familiar with this practice, whether it was as old as the Hebrew Bible? Rubina, if you want to?
Yeah, it's usually for cleansing, like the body, spirit, and soul. And I haven't done that in many years, but I remember when I went as a kid, I forgot where it even was located. There's a lot of them in New York. You just have to know where you're going. And I know that the men go separately and the women go separate. Like they have their own section, and because you cannot go in with anything, so you would have to go in naked. And that's what it is. It basically it's like a baptism, but for Jewish people. It's like, yeah.
Very good. And it's more regular, right, in the context of Judaism. So the mikveh is this ritual bath, right? It's exactly like a baptism. You immerse fully and you come out, right? Or at least a Baptist baptism, not the Catholic one where you have a trickle of water. It is something that people do regularly in Judaism. The women go every month, right, to purify. The men go for, maybe before the day of the Sabbath, or maybe on special holidays, but this is a regular thing. So I'm assuming, honestly, that these jars were so big, right? They can't just be there for hand washing, right? That's what I'm assuming. So I'm assuming there was a mikveh in the house, right? And these jars were used for this type of ritual. So sticking the mikveh water, mikveh, remember, is the ritual bath, right? And he's saying, here, start to pour that water into the cups of the guests. And of course, wine comes out. Okay, what is the meaning of this story? Can anyone give me an interesting explanation, spiritual lesson that we can draw? Let's hear you a little bit on this topic. We have about 15 minutes where we can elaborate on this. What does it mean? You can think about it one of the ways I think about this text is like it's a beautiful lesson for married couple, right? When the wine runs out, which it will, right? What can yet happen, right? Or it can be about you, your own life, right? When your creativity runs out, when your strength runs out, right? Let's try to be very existential, right? Think of all the times that you run out, right? Run out of love, run out of strength, run out of creativity, run out of your own life, right? What is the text teaching us for those moments where we run out? What can be done, right? It's not just only Jesus, right? People are doing a lot in this text. What can we do? What can God do in these moments when we run out? Run out of love, run out of faith, run out of creativity, run out of energy. What can we learn? Let's hear it. Let's do a little sermon time. Okay, Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
Okay, well, I don't want to be like, oh, like Christian or whatever by saying this, but like he just like replenishes us, like even when we least expect it, even though it doesn't seem like legitimately possible, like literally turning water into wine doesn't even seem real. Like, but for the fact that like Jesus did it, like shows that like it's possible for like God, Jesus, or whatever, like to just inspire us to like rekindle that fire, like relight us up, you know?
Okay, so you make the common Christian mistake. I will tell you.
Well, I don't know,
Okay,
like
if I may, common Christian mistake. God is doing everything for me.
I will. Okay, well, maybe I'm
All
not.
right,
Yeah,
I'll help you. I'll help you. This is not just Jesus going to the wedding and like with a magic wand, boom, transforming, right? There is something that human beings are doing, and this is the part that we forget often, right? What is the part of the human being for this alchemy, this thing to happen, right? Do you want to try, Pierre Antoine, before I get some?
yeah. Okay, I guess like in terms of like the human, like when you're looking at the people, like the actual servers doing these things, like I think it kind of relates back to like that divine, like the divine being within us, like you know, like that thing of like Ruth, in a sense, where we talk about like it coming, like the divine purpose of like coming out of us. Like I think it's just talking about like the power that like humans also have. Like it's not really just always God. Like yes, we have God, but also there are like people around us, or like even ourselves. Like we could do these things, and we could actually bring ourselves out of these things if we look to other people because of God.
Okay,
I don't know if I'm
good.
in
You're
there.
getting there. You're getting there. Okay, let's hear Kestenbaum. Go ahead.
Well, I know this isn't like the whole point of our discussion, but I do just want to push back a little on this notion that it was the mikvah water that Jesus used. I mean, that's definitely an interesting interpretation, and certainly mikvahs were prominently used in this time period. I think the first appearance of a mikvah is the beginning of like the 1st century BCE. It's mentioned explicitly in the Old Testament. But a mikvah needs to be connected to a natural spring or a natural well of occurring water. That's usually supplied by rivers and lakes. But essentially, there needs to be a natural spring connecting it to its source. So if it's confined within a vessel, so number one, if it's confined in a vessel and if that water is left unattended and not connected to a spring overnight, then it would not be able to be used for a mikvah. So there definitely is like this symbolism as to what Jesus did in terms of turning the water into the wine, but I don't know if that's necessarily connected to the idea of like a rebirth, which is definitely what a mikvah is.
Yeah, I think you're right. And as you were talking, I noticed in my notes, right? It's not it's not a mikveh water. You're right. Mikveh water is like a continuously flowing water.
Yeah, it could be water for washing your hands.
Exactly. This was water used for the feet and the hands,
Yeah.
which was common practice before eating. You had to wash the feet and the hand, and because there was a large assembly. So I'm shifting, guys. Not mikveh water, not ritual bath water used to purify the hands, the feet. And because there were so many guests, now I see it. Well, there were so many big jars, right? So many guests means so much water. Okay, so now that we've clarified the metaphor, let's continue to try to interpret. Why? Okay, so what does it mean, this water that is meant to purify? This is our task, right? And then what does it mean that it becomes wine? Let's try and understand this. Goldstein, help us.
I think it's significant that the text that Jesus said to his servants, fill the jars with water, and they filled them to the brim, because he didn't create the wine out of nothing, like poof, here we go. He just transformed it into something else. So going back to your question before, when we run out of steam on creativity and energy and all the things that you said, we still need to put in a little bit effort as much as we feel we can, and to give God that path and that kind of vessel towards these miracles. So it's not like poof, he just does things for you, but he does miracles according to kind of the laws of nature, and we need to help him along a little bit.
Yes, excellent, right? This is the point that I was seeing in the story, right? There is a huge human. Before Jesus, we never focus on the human element. We just see Jesus going around with a wand, right? That's how I envision him, right? Here we have, on the other hand, this huge human element of these waters of purification that must be filled to the brim, right? And so excellent, right? One way to understand the story, as Goldstein is saying, is that we need to do our part, and then the miracle can happen, right? So God doesn't do miracles out of nothing. He works, you know, in other words, he builds on what we have started, right? Or he finishes the task. I mean, it's similar to, I think Jesus, one of the teachings he has is about the farmer sowing, right? We sow, we water, but ultimately the growth is a miracle which is out of our hands. So similar idea here. Very good. Let's see. Pierre-Antoine, you want to come back?
Yeah, okay, because that kind of just made me think, like, I literally heard that on Sunday, which is weird, but okay. But I was thinking about like Ecclesiastes when Solomon was talking about what is it, like, I think 2:26, where he's talking about like only God gives him like this happiness, joy, whatever. So like, isn't that pretty much like you're kind of striving in a sense, like you're like putting in the effort is like striving, and then like I guess releasing. So it is like that balance of like yin and
Yes,
yang. Okay.
I love it. Action without action. Remember the Taoist concept, right? You do your part knowing that the result is not in your hands, right? This is such beautiful advice for any situation we're in where it seems hopeless, right? I can't fix this marriage. I can't fix this child. I can't fix this student. I can't fix this parent. It's overwhelming. I can't deal with this. I'm exhausted. The text is saying you do your part, right? Action without action. You pour the water, you can do that, right? And as you pour, it transforms into wine. This is so powerful. I want us to really, really digest this, right? As we do our part, which is not enough, right, to change the child or the spouse, right? As we pour, and I'm gonna ask what it means. What are we pouring? What does it mean, this jar that we're pouring? We have to analyze this. But as we do this, transformation occurs. So here's my next question. We need to go deeper. What does it mean, this pouring? What does it mean concretely? Suppose you're in a difficult situation, right? With a parent or a child or a spouse, and everything is dead and there's no hope, right? Or even within yourself, your creative self. What does it mean that you begin to pour? And what is the meaning of this water of purification? What does it mean to pour the waters of purification? What is this task that we're supposed to do before this deep alchemy can occur, where wine can begin to come out again, right? What does it mean to pour the waters of purification? That's my precise question. Okay, Ram, go ahead.
Well, before you bring the question, I was going to say that's continuing to faith. You have to have faith.
Yes, there's an element of risk. Imagine those guys coming in the banquet, right, with these big water jars, and they look like morons. I mean, I hope you realize. People are like, "What the hell are you doing? What is this? I don't want to give you my cup. What is this water from, you know?" So they look like complete idiots with their big jars starting to pour, right? So yes, there's an element of risk, of faith. You look like an idiot. What does it mean? Give me an example. If any of you have ever done this, where you were pouring, looking like a moron, pouring the waters of purification, and something happened and wine came out. Okay, let's see. Stajic, tell us.
Well, I was thinking, if you already want to speak, I don't think this is philosophical, metaphorical, and illogical in any way. But if you want to go that way, I would say that this water could be, in a sense, anything that is negative within us to make it positive.
Okay,
So
you're
water
no good.
that's, I don't know, the water that this was useless pretty much. However, maybe something that's in us, our anger. This is from a tennis. I don't know how many people know tennis. I forget the name. The guy, his trainer told him to take his anger and turn it into his game.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, maybe in a way, like, if you want to talk metaphorically and illogically, you can say that this is something that is useless within you, or something that is not good within you, or something, and transform it into something good.
Yeah, very good. And now, well, be careful. The transformation. Who does that?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Right? Okay, so great. We're getting there. So the waters of purification could mean, as you begin to purify your ego, as you begin to undergo humility, as you begin to go through your own dark night of the soul, as you begin to shed all of the layers and all of the tears in your body, right? As you're undergoing this, cleansing, as you're allowing this cleansing to occur, and you're pouring yourself into the situation, not knowing whether it's going to help, but you're pouring yourself. One day, something will shift. That's the story. Okay, so let me give you an example. So you can really see what I'm talking about, right? Let me think of a good example. Or maybe one of you can give me an example. So I'll see if you raise your hand. Ram, you have an example, or you just have your hand raised from, no. Okay, let me give you an example I've heard, right? You have a lot of stories like this where you have a difficult relationship, right? And you shift your behavior, and whether it's a child or a friend or a parent or a spouse, right? It's not going well. The water ran out. There's no more wine. It's over, right? And you go through this purification process where you realize, I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep pouring. And I know it's not going to help, but I'm going to keep pouring those waters of purification. In other words, I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to do my part. I'm going to keep on loving. I'm going to keep on forgiving. I'm going to keep on giving. Even though this is not working, I'm going to do it. What the text is saying is that the human being who pours himself or herself out in this way is setting themselves up or opening themselves up for a powerful alchemical moment where one day they're pouring and the water that comes out is wine, right? This is the story. So it's not really about a wedding in Galilee. This is a story for every single one of us and it's giving us the path to when things run out in our lives, right? What is the text saying? Keep pouring, right? Pour whatever you have, right? Bring whatever you have, do whatever you can. And one day, if you keep on pouring and pouring and pouring, there will be a shift, right? Miraculously. It's just like a garden. I don't know if you garden. I try. It doesn't work out very well. But you know how you have this seed and you put it in the pot and it's there and you're like, this is never going to work, right? If you're like me. But here you are, you're pouring, right? Your water, you're putting it in the sun, shifting the angle. Still nothing. 4 weeks, nothing. You're like, this ain't working. This is bullshit, right? And one day, poof. You see what I'm talking about? This story is about the miracle of life, right? If we can create new life in any situation, that's what the story is saying. New life is possible in any situation as long as Ram said, right? We pour. We look like a moron, but we're pouring. We look like idiots, but we're pouring, right? And one day, poof, it pops out, right? That's the idea here. Okay, Pierre-Antoine, yes.
I kind of thought of this example. I don't know if that was going to make sense, but I kind of thought of like playing an instrument or like learning a sport. Kind of like you're like really bad when you first start out. And like obviously you could just quit the first day because you're like, wow, I'm trash. So then, but like you could also like actually try and keep trying and keep playing. I mean, even though you still suck. And like one day you might actually become good and actually become like pro at it.
That's the idea. I just had, and I'll close with this, right? Perfect example is the story of Ruth, right? Look at her in the beginning, pouring. Naomi wants to get rid of her. She's, I'm staying with you. Then they get in Bethlehem. Okay, I'm going to go out and work. And she's gleaning and she's pouring. What she has, she's giving, right? The love she has, she's offering. It's nothing. It's not helping, right? What she's doing is not helping the situation, right? Anything she's doing, coming with Naomi is not helping. Gleaning in the fields is not helping. The situation is still bitter. Naomi is still going to die with no descendants, right? But here she is, just pouring the little water that she has, giving the love that she has, even though it is completely pointless. And one day, right, that love leads her, right? Remember, we talked about this. When you follow your path, right? When you follow the law of kindness, right? You end up, you receive it back, right? You become saturated by it, which is the meaning of Ruth. And so in a way, I think the book of Ruth, right, is the perfect illustration of what this story is. Pour what you have, give the love you have, even though it's not helping. One day, there will be a profound shift coming out of nowhere, seemingly. But it will be you having poured so much that the water turned into wine. Okay. Thank you, Goldstein. Yes, no holes no, in the jug. Okay, next time we're going to talk about the Pharisee in the night and the woman at the well, chapters 3 and 4. In parallel. They are parallel stories. Pharisee and Samaritan woman are given the same teaching. It's very interesting. We'll talk about that. So please read John 3 to 4 for next time. And we shall resume when? Thursday. All right, good luck, guys. Enjoy the text. I'll stop the recording.